Chris Thomas, the head of MultiGP, loves IO. He loves it so much that it is his favorite event that they run all year. But with every MultiGP event comes something interesting, rivalries. And Chris talks about how he deals with those in this video. Enjoy. The business that is behind MultiGP, how many people do you employ, and how many of those people are volunteers?
I'd have to count, but I think we employ 6 people.
Okay.
The reason it's not at the top of my brain is I run 2 other businesses.
Right. Okay.
And so, it gets a little bit crazy. There's, but in terms of volunteers, we probably have about, that help on the corporate side, 20, 25 people help here. And then, we have over 60 tier 1 chapters. We have over 100 tier 2 chapters, a ton of tier 3, and quite a few provisional as well. And we all consider them part of the same team. They work just as hard as we do.
What do you think? You like you said, you run multiple businesses. What do you think the budget of MultiGP is per year?
I try to not look at it. I really try to not look at it because we don't really turn a profit, and I usually end up funding the times.
I was going to say, how much of that budget comes out of your pocket?
Oh, yeah, if it's not there, I provide it. That's how it has to work right now. Okay. I would say we probably spend close to $250,000 a year. Okay.
And of that, and if you're not comfortable answering this, then that's fine. Of that $250,000, how much do you think, Chris Thomas puts in with the stroke of a pen?
Oh yeah, I don't know. I would be afraid to say it because if it's the wrong number, that IRS group could come.
Okay, all right, yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I try to make it as close to 0 as possible, and I've yet to have a 0 year. This year could be it. Okay, we'll see.
How do y'all? What's your I know that I've participated in a few MultiGP events, so I'm not a racer. I'm just an old dude that likes to fly and talk to people.
Yeah. Did you go to IO?
I did not go to IO, and I think I'm gonna have to go to IO next year.
Oh, it's the Burning Man of drones.
Everybody, I saw all the videos coming out of IO, and maybe this leads into it. Where do y'all generate a lot of your revenue from? Because the races don't typically cost anything, and if they do, I assume it goes to the local chapter.
So we do several events a year where there is a company that comes along and says, hey, we want you to help us run a drone race, and those are profitable for us. We'll have X expenses, we'll charge Y dollars, we'll make a profit on that. We receive sponsorship dollars from a lot of sponsors, and we try to be very thrifty with the dollars that we spend to spread it out among a lot of events. So like Team Black Sheep, for example, huge sponsor of MultiGP. They've been a big sponsor for a long time. We do sell some merchandise, so that helps to offset some of our costs as well. Ticket sales for events, like for example, the International Open, we sell tickets for that event. Normally, if you want to look at the math, right, without getting really detailed, typically the ticket sales cover prizes and some, if not all, of the expenses, right? That's what we hope for on that. And, so just we've got multiple streams of income that are coming into MultiGP.
Tell me what your experience of IO is, because that is probably the pinnacle event every year for MultiGP is IO. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, for me, it's my favorite.
Okay,
without a doubt, it's my favorite.
Why?
It reminds me every year why I do what I do. Because it's easy to forget, when you're in the stress and you're struggling sometimes with just the workload or whatever other stresses they're there, maybe a completely different stress in life. If you've ever had a trial in your life where you go through something for whatever reason, and it's really, really difficult. But you come out the other end, and it's like you 2.0, right? Have you had those experiences in your life?
Oh,
For
yeah.
me, every IO is that experience. So year one was the year that everyone who heard of what we were going to do, which was have 8 tracks on the same venue, said, "You're crazy. It's not going to work. The only reason I'm going is to watch this thing burn." This was pre-Fire Festival days. So
Right.
they thought we were going to be that type of event. And it almost did. It almost did. When we first were doing that event, we were having some terrible, terrible video issues. And that's when, of course, the hammer incident occurred. That was me specifically addressing the one thing that was going to make the event fail. Whether I addressed it the right way or the wrong way, it's history. So it's been debated over and over and over again. I can't change it. But that was a very tough event. But it was a very rewarding event to get to the end of those ridiculous hours. Because we put in, any volunteer who was there was putting in hours that no human being should have to go through. And but to get to the end, to see all the happy faces, and some of the moments that I had there at the very end, I had a hat from the event that I went around and was having all the guys who were right there in the trenches with me, my brothers that I built through the labor at that event, and getting them to sign my hat, and sharing that emotional connection. I remember I met Double A, I'm a big fan of. He's one of our really dedicated, great attitude volunteers. And, I remember bringing him the hat going, "Hey, Aaron, can you sign my hat?" And he looks at me, he's like, "Me?" "Yeah, you, man. You and me, like, we were there. We went through this together." He looks over and his eyes get a little teary. My eyes get a little teary. And, I'm the type, I don't like to show that kind of emotion, right? I get uncomfortable with it. But just having that moment with a fellow volunteer, and we're doing this for others. We're not just out there doing it for ourselves. We're doing it because we like that other people are enjoying this. That was magical for me. So then fast forward to year 2, that was again just it was another great event, but it was not nearly as crazy as the first one. There was still some really long hours, mainly because the mistake that we made is we overcommitted the things that we were going to do. We ran from 8 in the morning to midnight every day. I don't think I slept at all.
Yeah.
There was another time in that one. I remember, it's 3 in the morning, and my feet are just soaking wet. They are so they were beyond wrinkled. If you pulled them out of my shoe, you would have said, "Those are not feet. Those are something organic, not feet." And I look over, and sure enough, who's right there beside me is Double A, And I could barely even lift the hammer to hit the stake in the ground that I'm trying to get installed so we can get the team racing course finished. But we did it. And then it gets to the end, and the same thing. So now fast forward to this last event that we had. We fixed a lot of our scheduling problems. We backed off on the amount of work we needed, that we committed to doing. We shut the event down at 8. We started at 10. Huge change in quality of life for a volunteer. And also, now we have 3-year seasoned veterans, because one thing that's pretty consistent is almost every person who volunteers once comes back. We're just gluttons for punishment. You leave the event after it's over and you say, "I'll never do that again." And 2 or 3 weeks later, for whatever reason, your brain has forgotten the hard parts, and it's saying, "I can't wait for the next IO.
Right.
Can't wait." But we're getting back together. It's just like summer camp. I see Marcus, and he's the happiest guy ever. He shows up, and right away, it's just the gang is back together again. This time, everybody knows exactly what they're doing, and it was flawless. It was so well run. Everybody knew what to do. No one, even questioned the work that had to be done. And we were just a great team. So there was so much time this time to spend with the pilots, to just hang out with your friends. So I think that's why you saw such a good response this year. Is it was just, even if you had never met anybody there, if you were into FPV, the moment you walk in the door, you're just among friends. So it was great.
Yeah, I had a lot of people asking me because, this whole interview thing had kicked off a little bit before IO. My name was getting out there a little bit. I had interviewed some big names, and people were like, "Dude, are you going to IO?" And I just, I work a full-time job. I'm a family man.
Right.
Picking up and running out to the middle of Indiana, in the middle of the summer was just not an option this year.
Right.
I'll have to plan it, but I definitely want to try to go next year. So I was this year. I was jealous to see all of the fun that people had. That it's like, man, I could have been there. That would have been so much fun.
Yeah.
So
it really was. I mean, and so that's one event. A lot of the events we do, for example, the championships, which are coming up in November, that event it's serious, right? If you're not taking it serious, you don't stand a chance in the world, because everyone there will be taking it very serious. It is a business trip. If you go to the championships, you're going for business. You're looking to put yourself on that board and hopefully stand on that podium when it's all said and done. IO is not that. That's the one event that we do that is just, look, we're going to all get together. This is our one big party. Let's go have fun. Let's fly as much as we possibly can. Let's do all kinds of crazy shenanigans. Let's hang out with Jesse Perkins. Who doesn't want to hang out with Jesse Perkins? But Jesse is a cool dude. If you don't like hanging out with Jesse, then I'm sorry. I don't even understand what you do every day for fun. So it's a good time.
One of the questions that comes up for me is, I spend a lot of time with this little show that I do, trying to walk the line between being neutral and being friends. And there are quite a few rivalries in the drone industry. And one big rivalry that I could point out right now is you called out that TBS is, a huge sponsor, and the Nationals are going to be sponsored by RDQ, who are these two. You probably, if you put Trappy and Tyler in the same room together, they would probably both spontaneously combust before they could lay hands on each other.
Well, I would say that that's not the case. Face to face, both of those two people are quite civil. But you take out the need to have the typical social niceties that you need face to face, and they'll tell you how they really feel, which you see online quite a bit.
How do you, you're this entity in the hobby, which is now a sport,
right?
How do you maintain your neutrality such that you can have TBS as a big sponsor and RDQ as a big sponsor, and one of them is not going to look at you and be like, get rid of those guys? Yeah.
Well, let me start by thanking you for saying that I'm neutral, and I do a good job at that, because I have made a ton of mistakes along the way.
Right.
When I first started, I was very opinionated in terms of other racing leagues and what other people were trying to do. Some of it, I still stand by how I feel. The only problem is when you are also a racing league. If I call out another racing league, am I doing it because I truly am being objective and I'm trying to help, or is it a strategy? Is it a marketing plan? Is it a way to defeat a competitor? And so I don't think I did a very good job. It wasn't until a hurricane hit here in Florida that took me away from MultiGP, intensively. I was literally out of MultiGP for a while, that I came back in with, I think, a more objective perspective when it came to that. But anytime I know that there's a rivalry, I talk to the individual companies. I spoke to Tyler. I spoke to Trappy. While Trappy may have whatever beef he has with race day quads, he is more important for him is seeing MultiGP succeed, because he's a strong believer, as am I, that unless you have a community of people who do this for fun regularly, you will never have something big enough to survive. You'll never create a big enough sport to have the market, to have the television, to have all the things that you see so many others striving for. DRL, which is a really well-produced drone race, What it needs is a dedicated audience. And the best dedicated audience are people who fly drones and race drones. So that was something that I discussed with them. But there have been rivalries in the past. There have been times where this company's sponsoring, well, then this company doesn't want to have anything to do with it. And sometimes we can work past it, sometimes we can't.
What is the... Let me think about this the right way. How do you make the decision, or do you even make the decision of which sponsor to walk away from in those circumstances? Or do you let the sponsors themselves make the decisions?
Well, I mean, how deep are you trying to go with this question? You're trying to turn over a stone that no one knows about, or are you just
no. I'm thinking I'm trying to get into the decision making process. Like,
sure,
I'm not trying to turn over, stir up some dust that nobody knows about yet, right? Like, I'm just curious, and
that's what you're supposed to do, by the way, in your role. Like, you're supposed to be the tough, edgy investigator.
I want you to be comfortable, though. But I really think the decision-making process behind how do you decide who walks away and who doesn't is valuable for, I think, the industry in general, because you are in, to a degree, an arbiter's position, because you're right. You guys make up a significant part of the reason that people fly. And if somebody decides to walk away from MultiGP, that might be a pretty big decision.
Yeah. Well, if we were to run into a situation, first and foremost, I'm going to look at who were both companies asked to participate at the same time? Mm-hmm. Or was there an extenuating circumstance where this company did not get notified till a different time? And then at that point, have they signed on the dotted line, so to speak, already in that role? And then also, have they been longtime supporters of MultiGP? So I'll tell you right now, whenever we have an event, usually the first vendor that I let know is TBS.
Okay.
Because they have been extremely easy to work with, extremely supportive, not just on a financial standpoint. This is hard. It's easy for someone who is just a consumer of races. You just go out to races, you have a great time, to say something probably without the intent of it being very hurtful, or more importantly, not so much hurtful, but demotivating. Mm-hmm. If you go spend 20 hours editing this video and someone just says something that hits right, that's bashing your work, even though they may not mean for it to get to you, sometimes it can get to you, and sometimes it can steal that drive that you have to do this. Mm-hmm. So that's the same thing, and that's been a big thing about having a supporter like Trappy, is seeing someone who just says, look, man, keep doing what you're doing, you guys are doing a great job. It has a positive impact, as opposed to saying, you shouldn't have used that color blue on that logo because it just looks terrible when you print it. Okay, that's great, thanks for the feedback, but what are you really helping here right now? Yeah. So we've got a couple of supposed fans that every comment is just like a critique. Oh, you just did that. Let me tell you what you did wrong with what you did. Mm-hmm. Hey, thanks, buddy. Appreciate it.
I've got a few fans like that.
Yeah, I've made that mistake in my working life. With a subordinate, right? Instead of going to subordinate and saying, look, I see how much you worked on this project and I really appreciate it. Instead, I immediately rip it apart. And it's a bad habit that I try to avoid, but I've done it, so.
No matter where we are in human history, rivalries will exist, and people will not get along with other people. It's how we manage them is the important thing, and Chris talks about that definitely in this last episode. You can find information on Chris and MultiGP down in the description below. And I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank my patrons. My patrons make this possible. And I would like to ask you to consider, if you're not a patron, to become a patron. It helps make these shows more possible. It helps keep me in the air, helps keep my children in the air. It helps make all of this easier. It's a great validation, and I truly love my patrons. They get exclusive content only for them, and they are oftentimes asked to consider what the future of the channel will be. You can find the description to my Patreon in the link below, and I hope that y'all have a great day. Talk to you soon. Bye.